Hey, are you an entrepreneur? Are you someone that's finding yourself always engaged in tasks and activities that don't really add to the bottom line and it's frustrating you? Or maybe you're frustrated right now because even when you do every single thing that you can or think you can do, and something still comes up that gets in the way of you producing revenue and you don't have anyone that you can delegate those tasks to. What do you do in a situation like that? Well, if either of those are a pain point for you, then this show, this episode is for you. Thank you and welcome to another episode of Hang Out with Mark. Today we're talking about a very special episode here, an episode of how to make the most use of your time and spend more of it on money, or I guess you could say on revenue generating tasks rather than activities that don't affect or directly affect the bottom line. And if you're a new entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur in general, you know that there's a challenge, whether you've prepared for it or you haven't, things still come up. So first of all, thank you. If it's your first time watching the episode, I want to welcome you to it. And I also want to thank each and every one of you that make Hang Out with Mark a weekly habit. For all of you that want to do the same, go ahead. You can look on my lower third right now. It says www.marcgaudett.com. Go ahead to my website, sign up for the weekly updates with your name and your email address, and I'll email you each and every week on the topic as well as who will be the guests on the episode, so you can tune in or watch the live or watch the recording. But like I said, today's episode, we have another a very special guest who's actually been on our show before, and he was talking more about ways in which we can manage goal setting on the previous episode, how we can work backwards and create goals that work for us. And today, I figured who'd be a better person to speak about this whole topic and idea of focusing your time on activities that actually generate income, because him, like myself, have faced these challenges numerous of times, and Rob has a wealth of experience of doing that, of basically managing multiple projects, running a business, working with a company where he had to really help with generating generating income for them. And he's done so much and come across so many challenges that I think he has a wealth of experience that's going to help any entrepreneur, especially if you're new and just getting started. So without further ado, I want to introduce my good friend Rob Provenzano. This guy is the man that is known as putting butts in seats. If you're a speaker, you're putting on any event, he is the guy that can fill that room with your ideal target audience that you can speak to and communicate with so that you can grow your speaking business. But he does so much more than that. He's a consultant. He helps coach people. He creates his own programs to help service the community. He's working on a few right now. He does multiple things. So he knows about he knows about focusing his time to create activities that are going to be generating income. So Rob, why don't you say hi to the audience right here?
Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and glad you're here hanging out with Mark. And I hope I can add a lot of value today on the program and help you overcome some of the challenges you're having in making sure the things that need to get done get done.
Rob, thank you so much. And you know what? Thank you for joining the show. And before we preface it, I just want to flash this on the screen for everyone. It says 80-20, okay? 80-20. And I think most people watching this episode knows what that means, right? You've probably all heard of the Pareto principle, or that law where, 20% of the activities that we do produces 80% of our results. And why not preface that on this episode? Because the reality is we all know this. We all know this as entrepreneurs, but the challenge that comes up time and time again is, I understand this, but there's so much that I need to do that is important. It's not revenue generating, but it still needs to be done. And I can't seem to get myself away from it. So I find myself spending 80% of my time doing things that don't generate revenue, even though I know I need to be spending 80% of my time doing things that do generate revenue. And no matter what, I can't seem to get away from it. So this episode is really going to break down some actionable strategies. Rob has a ton of value to provide on this that we can take as entrepreneurs to really flip that switch, just flip it on its head and start overcoming one of our biggest challenges so that we can do what these episodes are geared to do, which is grow your business. grow your business. So I want to start off here, Rob, and maybe just give a little bit more of an intro, a clearer introduction than I gave to the audience, and then let's jump right into this topic because it's going to add a ton of value to every single person listening.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Happy to do that. As you mentioned, I produce events. I help people put butts in seats. I tell them how to target the right audience, who they need to be working with. I can work with them on their sales presentations, how it's flowing in their webinars, how it's flowing in their seminars, how to market, who to market to. But behind all of that, I was a project manager and systems analyst for 25 years. So I've got a lot of experience breaking down systems, seeing what's working, see where the waste is, getting that cut out, and then lining up the goals with the tasks and all the little things you need to do in order to actually achieve the goals of a project or something you're taking on. So that's really my background, and it fits actually quite well into being an entrepreneur because there are a lot of things you got to juggle, and scheduling and managing that time. And I just want to say, time management is actually a misnomer. We don't manage time. Time is time. We manage priorities that we take on within that time.
I love that, Rob, because it comes back to something I heard in the personal development literature, and it was like and I think it was Jim Rohn or Bob Proctor that said Earl Nightingale used to get so much done, and he wondered how he did, and he said, "How do you manage your time so effectively?" And Earl Nightingale looked at him and kind of laughed and says, "I don't manage time. I manage my activities." Right? He manages his priorities, just like what you said. So that resonates very well. But, I have a question to start the episode. I was reading some research, and one of the things said is, people are actually not as productive as they think. A study showed that a lot of the times, only 25 minutes to maximum of 4 hours of our day is actually being spent in a productive manner. So I wanted to get your insight on that and figure out, okay, if 25 minutes to 4 hours, depending on who you are, depending on what your job is, that's a big variance because most people go to work for 8 hours a day. And some entrepreneurs will go to work for 12 hours a day or even more than that. So what do you think really attributes to this, Rob? And do you, first of all, agree with any of those statistics?
I don't know about 25. That seems a little low. But yeah, 4 hours. When I was working in systems analysis, and we'd actually do time studies of people and their jobs, and I was blown away, even by myself, how much time I can waste in a day by doing things that are they don't seem like big things, but they take away your focus from what you're working on. And as soon as you break that focus, it takes time to actually re-engage fully. I think they say it takes 15 minutes to fully engage. So if you're interrupting yourself every 10 minutes, you're never really fully engaged in what you're doing. So there is a lot of time spent, especially, not so much for entrepreneurs. Well, they have some different challenges, but if you're in a work environment, it is so easy to get up and go talk to the person about, the TV show you watched last night or the kids or, now as a manager, you do some of that because, you want to know what's going on with your people and make sure, they're in a good space. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're checking Facebook every 10 minutes, you're not going to get a lot of work done. It's just the reality.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
Yeah, without focusing on what you need to be doing and clear the distractions, there is a lot of time wasted. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, on that statistic there, you and I read that same research. There was a speaker, and he had said, "Look, it takes about 15 minutes to engage. If you're being interrupted every 7 or 10 minutes, well, then you're in a lot of trouble because you're never really getting a chance to fully focus on what you're doing, and therefore you can't be doing your most productive work." So I think that makes a lot of difference. Now, one of the things that's going to be really important, that's going to segue into our challenge section of the show, like really the challenge with managing activities and activities that add to the bottom line versus activities that distract us from generating revenue, is this whole concept of a lot of times people will tune in and they'll get strategies, right, Rob? They're going to get strategies on how to organize themselves, how to organize their office, how to file everything away. But a lot of this information is already geared towards businesses that have some system in place and multiple employees. And so it wouldn't really be applicable for the solo entrepreneur or the entrepreneur that has maybe 1 or 2 employees, because they just don't have the resources yet to create those systems or time to realistically create that sort of framework to make the efficiency strategies work for them. And so, I think that really segues into our challenge section very nicely. Like, what are the challenges that solo entrepreneurs are facing, and before we even get into the solutions? So, maybe list some of the things that you think are some of the biggest challenges that those solo entrepreneurs are facing when they really try to get into to producing revenue, but they keep getting sidetracked by things. What are some of the things that you've seen the most?
Yeah, well, the challenges, and you kind of nailed it there. The challenges for a solopreneur or entrepreneur are very different from being in a corporate culture. Where you have to have communication centers and all that sort of. If you're a solopreneur, you don't need to set a communication center up in your house because you're only talking to yourself typically. So the different challenges for an entrepreneur is you're wearing every single hat in the company. And a lot of times we get bogged down into doing things we might be good at, but they're not necessarily generating revenue. For instance, some people are really good at bookkeeping, and they will spend an enormous amount of time keeping the records clean and straight. And yes, you do need to do that, but at the end of the day, that's not generating revenue. So, generate revenue, hire a bookkeeper. That's just a simple strategy. Unless you are a bookkeeper, and then, concentrate on doing other people's books, not your own so much. But yeah, there's that aspect. And the other huge aspect that comes up a lot is when people work out of their house. You need to set aside space in your house, even if it's just a desk. And, this is business only. If I'm at this desk, I'm doing business. I don't put personal things on my desk. I don't have pictures on my desk. I do have a plant. It's on the corner. But other than that, I don't have personal things that are going to distract me from what I need to get done in my business. And I don't have 10 things that I'm working on my desk. At the end of the day, they go in the drawer. Otherwise, you'll be looking at this, but you'll see this out of the corner of your eye, and yeah, I got to get that done. I don't really want to. And then you go into this whole cycle of, man, why do I have to do this? I don't really want to do that. And you start talking to yourself, and the next thing you know, 25 minutes have gone by, and you're still in the, oh man, okay, I need a break. I need to go get a coffee now. So if we actually look at the way we're operating a lot of times, we'll find that, we're our own worst enemies. And not staying focused and organized.
You're right. So one of those things that you talked about is that whole environment. Because a lot of solo entrepreneurs are working from home, or they don't necessarily have an office, or even if they do, it's easy to get personal mixed in with business. And when you do that, it obviously takes you longer to find things. I mean, one of the studies that I also came across was, because of that mixture of personal and business, and not having a place for everything, if you will, where you know exactly where the key items that you need in your business are each and every day, and a key place where you put them when you take them out, you put them back into. They've shown that there's been multiple. I mean, in one study, I think it came up to 12 hours per week that was wasted searching for stuff because it wasn't really organized in the way it should. So, 12 hours a week over the course of a year, you're spending weeks, right? Weeks and weeks, because of just having an unproductive environment that's keeping you unfocused. So it's so hard to get focused back in on what actually is going to drive revenue. So that's number one, is separating, the office and separating the personal stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what else? What's another big thing you see come up as a challenge for solopreneurs there, Rob?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's obviously a few, but one is even how you organize your own space. You've separated the personal out, but where specifically are you keeping things? Now, I had a huge advantage when I worked in manufacturing. I was an IT director, and we went through something called 5S, which is a Japanese system for basically organizing, everything has a place and everything's in its place. And so we had to document, in this drawer, these are the pens. The pens don't go in this drawer, they go in this drawer. They're always in this drawer. And they're labeled, so you can look at, the filing cabinets and go, okay, exactly what needs to go where. And even inside the filing cabinets, files are color coded, they're separated, and it's a lot of work to set up. It is. I understand that people are a little concerned with that, but the reality is, it's like an investment. If it takes a day to get organized, but it saves you 12 hours a week, how long until you get your payback? 1 week.
Right. I mean, and I think that's important to touch on because, you're a prime example of this. I know that you spent maybe 4 or 5 hours the other week. Nutrition, health is one of your big top priorities now. It's really like getting a system and a good meal plan in place that supports your workout. So you obviously made that a priority. And so part of that priority was to go through everything that you no longer need, that's no longer relevant to that nutritional program, and get rid of it. Anything that's expired, anything you don't really eat often, anything that's not going to support you in your goals is out, and everything that is needs to be put in a specific place. And I seen you post a picture on Facebook where everything was organized in specific jars in a specific drawer, so you knew exactly where to find your carbohydrates, your proteins, your carb sources, and they had a designated place, and they were only things that you absolutely would use, so that you didn't waste any time looking for these things or wasting time figuring out whether you had something or didn't have something. Everything was sort of systematic. So that's a prime example of you investing. So one of the things that we need to get off the top of the episode is that there is going to be a bit of an investment in time to get organized, get rid of what no longer is needed, and get rid of what is needed, and implement into a place what is needed. And then there's also going to come a place where now we need to have a regular, especially for a solopreneur, a regular scheduled time each week where we continue to make sure that we are organizing, because the reality of the situation is it's very easy when we get busy and into things for papers to go where they shouldn't go and things to go where they shouldn't. And at least if we're staying on top of that weekly, especially again as a solopreneur, because no one else is going to do it for us, we need to actually implement that time in there to ensure our success and to ensure our organization. What do you think about that, Rob?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that's one of the challenges where people break down or fail in organization is you do have to schedule time in to stay organized. I like to clean up my desk kind of at the end of the day. Now, some people say do it first thing in the morning. I say, no, do it at the end of the day. That way, when you come in, you're ready to go.
Right.
And, when I worked for some of the larger financial companies, you had to clean your desk off at the end of the day, and everything had to be locked up because we had obviously very confidential information. So there was nothing on your desk when you left at the end of the day. You unlocked your laptop, you took it home with you. You come in the next morning, your desk is clean, you're ready to go, you're ready to start. And, I just find it's one of those things, and it gets away from me at times because I don't remember to schedule it in. And the next thing I know, my desk is a mess, and I'm like, how did that happen? Now I got to take time and do it again. But hopefully, if you can develop the habit, it's kind of like working out. If you work out every single day for a month, at the end of the month, you're just going to want to work out. Cleaning your desk is the same thing. Keeping things organized is the same thing. And you'll be so much happier because now when you're looking for something, you know where it is. You're not spending 20 minutes looking for it.
I love it, man. And so let's talk about a few more key, especially in this modern age, a few more of these key distractions before we go into some real solutions and identify for the entrepreneurs listening how they can actually identify what their priorities are and ones that add to the revenue and ensure that they're moving towards these daily. So something that you and I talked about yesterday was this whole notion of, email, social media, like Facebook, right?
This
Your
right here.
phone, text messages, right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because this is something that is sometimes overlooked, but it's something that every single one of us has challenges with.
Right. Absolutely. And, one of the strategies I use is I set aside a certain time of day to check emails. Because I get a ton of emails coming in. And, especially with a lot of the research I do into what's working these days in seminars, what's not working, looking at marketing, I can get, 300-400 emails a day. So now what I've done with a lot of those is I've sent them to a separate email address that I only check when I'm going in to do research. So it's not coming to my high priority things I really need to look at inbox. And that way, not only are you cutting down the number of emails, but then, as I said, I actually schedule time to look at emails. Now, Facebook is another huge one. You can get on, I don't want to say you, but I can get on Facebook and I can waste an hour just checking messages and getting caught up with the latest posts. And I mean, it's a great thing to do, but it's not moving my business forward. I love to connect. I love to be around people. I love to keep up with what they're doing. So, set a time when you're going to do that. Schedule in those personal things into your schedule. So Facebook, and having a cell phone nowadays, I mean, it's a necessity. You have to have a cell phone. People need to be able to get a hold of you. Unfortunately, people can get a hold of you. And a lot of us think that, well, if a call comes in, we got to answer it. If I'm in a meeting, I don't answer calls. I'm in a meeting. And it's hard. It's a hard habit to get into, because you might see, okay, I'm in a meeting with you. My girlfriend's calling. Oh, it's my girlfriend. Now, I had to make it clear with Diana, we don't talk during the day unless it's an emergency. I'm doing business. And, it took a while for her to get, especially if we're both here at the, my place together. She might say, well, you're right there. You can come up for a few minutes and help me. It's like, no, I can't. You need to wait till I've got personal time slotted in. And then I dedicate all my time to you personally. And that's another key thing. Separate business and personal, and schedule your personal stuff into your schedule.
I love it, because I think that, as you were saying that, when I used to live at home with my parents, I remember sometimes I'd be doing, even if it was just like schoolwork, or even if it was, a project I was working on, I almost had to put something on the door to allow them to, so that people wouldn't disturb me within certain times, because they think, well, it's exactly the same thing as Diana, your girlfriend, would say, well, you're just there. Well, yes, I'm just there, but consider this as if I'm in the office, because I'm really doing the same work as I'd be doing at work. You wouldn't come into my office and start, when I'm in a meeting or something, and just, leave home to go into my office and just do that, unless it was an emergency, right? And so it's exactly the same thing. Just because I'm doing it at home doesn't make it any less important. And so helping them understand that, and having a system where we can coordinate together, so that, we can make it work for both parties, obviously helps, especially if it's something that you find that is happening on the regular. So we talked about a few things, and you dropped some golden nuggets in there, and I wrote them down. So one thing that people will be listening is that they're going to start to notice is that you have a specific calendar in solution for things that are a priority. And so one of the things that Brendan Bouchard and a lot of other people will say is, if it's not in, like, show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. If you tell me something's a priority and it's not in your calendar, it's probably not a real priority. Or you just haven't made it at the high enough level where it is actually a priority that you can keep track of it and move towards it. So if it's a priority, it should be in your calendar. If your relationships are a priority, there's a time for your spouse in your calendar. If there is, writing emails or creating a program that you're going to be selling online is a priority, you need time to actually work on that program uninterrupted, so that you can get it created, so that you can actually sell that program. So there needs to be time in the calendar, because if it's not, everything else is going to distract you, and then you realize you don't have any time to create that. If writing a book is a priority, we need to have that in our calendar, so that we march towards completing that book. Otherwise, it gets to the end of the year, and people are, I just didn't have time to do it, because it wasn't in the calendar. So everything else took your time. So I like how you have that. So one of the things that we touched on, we talked on a lot of the things that distract people. We talked about social media. We talked about email. We talked about text messages. And all of these things can be used for business as well. But all of them can be used as distractions as well. So one of the things that you said that was very smart was you have specific designated times for these things with a specific intention when you go into it. So if I'm going to check Facebook, I'm going to use Facebook more as a revenue generating tool primarily, and have a time where I'm blocked off to schedule my posts that are going to go out, and maybe a time where I spend 10 to 15 minutes liking or commenting on certain things, or checking a couple feeds, so that I'm kept in the know, and I have a time that I've allotted to that, so I don't get waddled around before I know at the end of the day has gone by and I've looked over 1,000 feeds. Everything is important with managing time. So let's take a look now and talk about this now, so people understand what the actual distractions are, and there's probably even more distractions that people are listening can think of. But now let's take it to another level. We know there's a lot of distractions. Now, how do we identify, first of all, our priorities, Rob? Priorities that are distinctly related to revenue generation. And then how do we create a system where we can start blocking these things in our calendars to ensure that we are marching towards the completion of these projects, which we say are our priorities, so that no matter what happens, we actually ensure that we move forward regardless of life getting in the way, which always happens each and every day. Or we'll say, not necessarily that it gets in the way, it always happens for us, but we're in control of how we manage our activities, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a bit, Rob. Maybe give us some advice here, identifying priorities, and what do we do once we've identified our priorities, and how many priorities should we have at a time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, a lot of that comes or goes back to, the episode we did on goal setting. You look at your business plan, you look at the goals that you're trying to hit, and then you start breaking them out into deliverables. Now, those deliverables should be classified into different groups. Some of them are going to be admin, some of them are clearly revenue generation, some of them might be marketing, which leads to revenue generation. But, you've got to have a balance of those. Now, I'm just looking at the wall behind you, and I can see the sticky notes, the different color sticky notes. That is a fantastic system. Now, if you chunk that out into a weekly calendar, and your orange were your sales, your blue were your marketing, your pink were your admin, and you can look right visually, boom, above your desk. Okay, how much time am I spending on sales? I love things like that. And actually, I just took mine all down because I'm redoing everything next week up at the cottage and redoing all my business plans. But normally, yeah, I've got my business plan. What am I doing? I've got my goals laid out. I can see them and I can see my progress. But that's an excellent, a tool. And one of the things that, people need to be cognizant of is if you set aside 2 hours to do, write, say, in towards your ebook, you got 2 hours. At the end of 2 hours, you're done. So it starts to put pressure on you. It's like, okay, I don't have time to check Facebook now because the clock's running. And, I've actually seen people do this where they've got a clock on their desktop and they'll hit the button and go, okay, I got 2 hours. And they will write for those 2 hours. And when they're done, they're done. Put it away, move on to the next task. And I mean, that's a hard level to get to. That's challenging. But you look at the guys that produce huge results, like top Fortune 500 CEOs, you go into a meeting with them, that they might say, okay, you've got 12 minutes, boom, go. And you have 12 minutes. That's it. If you're not done, then you better organize your thoughts better going in. And so that's one thing. And the other thing to be cognizant of is if you have a task and it's got a drop dead deadline, you can't miss the deadline. You may underestimate how long it takes. You may overestimate how long it's going to take. Understand there's got to be some play in that schedule as well. And you know what? If you got all your work done and you get 15 minutes of playtime available, you can decide, okay, do I want to do something on sales or do I want to check Facebook? Because I earned this time. I got my goals done. I got my priorities. Now, what do I want to do with my time?
I like how you said that, Rob, because one of the mistakes that I made when I was working in the corporate culture at one time is I became sort of like a machine. And so what I did is I did have prioritized time and activities that I wanted to get done each day, and it worked really well. I would say I got a lot done, but I would say I did this even on the weekends. I didn't have any flex time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I had completed these things. So when I had done that, well, the reality was I was always on the go. And so, I didn't have that 15 minutes of flex time where it was like, hey, I've completed my projects. Let me have a reward time. I didn't have that. It didn't exist. So I was always doing these projects. And while that's great, the one thing that you kind of miss there is sort of the end goal. And what happens if something takes longer than what I had scheduled for? Well, now I'm stressed because I don't have any time to get it done because everything's been blocked. and so I'm screwed. And so I've created unnecessary stress on myself by by trying to get everything done at once and not leaving any time or blocks where if something, because they say it very easily, we underestimate what we can do in a day or a year, but I would say it's this, right? We overestimate what we can do in a day.
Yeah.
And we underestimate what we can do in a year.
Yes, absolutely.
So when I think about that, you said something very important is like, yes, block your priorities, but you need to have additional time in there that isn't blocked specifically for work or any other thing. It's almost like flex time, because we often, if we've never done it, if you're watching this episode, you may have never created an ebook before. And even if you have, you're always going to run into things. There's always something that's going to take longer than what you planned for. Something may not go perfect. And if it doesn't go perfect, what are you going to do then? Because you can't get more time.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And you hit on two really important things there, and I'll address that one in a second. But the other one was reward. And you just called it right out. So if you're getting your things done, reward yourself. And a lot of people say, well, piece of chocolate, or no, don't do that. Mark's a fitness guy.
Well, I'll be honest.
No, I do the chocolate.
The dark chocolate, I do have a piece here and there. Grace, my girlfriend, also has some. Sometimes we have some dark chocolate, and there are some benefits in that. If you take that at certain times, you'll get some good vascularity in the arms. It does work.
Yeah. And now the other point, and again, I'm looking at your background in the sticky notes. If you've got a high priority task and you didn't schedule enough time, and the flex time won't cover it, what lower priority task is coming out of that schedule? Because you're right, you can't make up the time. And one of the big mistakes that a lot of solopreneurs make is like, oh, I'll just cut into my personal time. Yeah, so you're sacrificing time with your relationship. You're in business for your relationship to begin with. It doesn't work. That whole, I'm going to take personal time and work harder now. It's a really bad idea. Ends lots of marriages. Let me just say that. And so what is coming off, and that's where it goes back to aligning all the priorities with your goals, and then ranking those priorities. And one of the systems we used to use with when I trained with Kevin Trudeau in the Global Information Network, we had something called priority management system, and we couldn't get the electronic version. We had to get the paper version, and we'd have to write out all our priorities for the day and block them out. Now, if you didn't get them done, you had to rewrite them the next day. And after you've rewritten them a few times, you're like, okay, either I got to get this done or this is not a priority. One of the two, because you get tired of rewriting them. And that's part of the magic of the system. And why he didn't like the electronic one, because if it's electronic, well, you just move this over here. Yeah, no big deal. Which is convenient, but it doesn't force you to get things done.
Right. So I hear what you're saying, and I actually like that idea a lot, because it really helps you ingrain it into your conscious and subconscious. If there is something that is a priority, but you keep finding that you get distracted by continually connecting to it daily and forcing yourself to write it, just like you said, either one or two things are going to happen. You're gradually going to actually make that a priority, what you say is a priority, or you're going to realize it's not really a priority, and you'll focus on something else. And so I want to create for the people listening now, right? So we've talked a little about some of the challenges. We've even talked about some potential ideas and strategies that they can use to really start moving things forward. Now, let's just hypothetically, while we're on this episode, let's give them a framework or a model. A lot of the studies that I've read, they say focus on your top 2 or 3 priorities at a time, right? So let's say that for a time. So I'm going to say I have 3 business priorities right now. Anyone that's watching, you're a new business owner or you're a fitness expert, you're trying to get your business going, here's a couple priorities that I'm working on right now. So I'm working on an ebook. I'm working on a webinar. And I am also working on my coaching systems, right? My coaching, my fitness and health clients that I work with. So those are three things that add revenue. Coaching is obviously one that provides revenue right away because I can actually do that right now. But the webinar and the ebook take a little bit of more preparation. However, they are things that will result in actual income, right? Because you'll be able to sell that. And on the webinar, you can sell your products or your services to your ideal market. So those are the top 2 or 3 priorities that I have from a business perspective that I have to work in there. So within that, I need to create timelines, right, Rob? I need to create some timelines on when these projects are needing to be done. Now, I've made a decision because I'm going to China for a month in December. Basically, I'm going to have almost no internet connection, or I'll have to play around with it there, because anyone that's been to China or knows about China, there's certain rules and sites that you're able to access within China. For example, this Google Hangout will not be possible, at least legally, for me to access during that month.
Absolutely.
So I have timelines that I need to get these projects or deliverables done by. And so my top priority is obviously my number 1 priority needs to be what produces the most revenue the quickest. And that's going to be coaching clients, because I can do that right now. So I need to have a time blocked in for prospecting and specifically dedicated to client generation for my coaching system every day, even if that's an hour. Because the goal is to get to 10 clients. Where I don't want to work with more than 10 clients at a time, because it's a very personalized approach. But that's my business model, right? So I need to create a system. My target is to get to 10 clients, by the end of, let's say, October, right?
Yeah.
I got to have that done by the end of October. So now I need to block in some time, especially right now, whether it's daily, to figure out how long is it really taking for me to get clients, right? How long is it really taking for me to find my ideal audience? Well, I don't exactly know that yet, but I have about a couple months here to start figuring it out. So why don't I take a week or two where I'm blocking at least an hour each day to prospect generation, and that could be between, one of the first things I do in the morning after my workout. Maybe that's between 9 and 10 a.m. after my workout, where I focus directly on that before I go into emails and everything else. Just client generation. Now I have a block time in my calendar, and I have a timeline I can focus on each month and each week to see if I'm going to be hitting that target of 10 clients, right?
Yeah.
Now, with respect to a webinar, now I have to create a webinar as well, because that's going to help me sell the ebook and sell my coaching systems a lot better as well. So I'm simultaneously working on webinars. Now, I may not do that every single day. However, I do need to create a webinar. So there's a lot of things that go into creating a webinar. If you're someone watching, so you've never done that, well, the first thing you're going to want to do is either watch a webinar to see what that is, so that you can get a flow. And then you might even want to invest in how to create your own webinar, like an actual program or system. So you got to block in time to watch webinars and to actually create invest and go through a training course that is going to help you with that if you choose that route. And then you have to have time to actually create the webinar, right? Because you got to create your own webinar. But a lot of things go into that too. So you need a timeline of when you want to have your first webinar, right, Rob?
Absolutely.
So when we have that timeline of when we want to have our first webinar, now we can work backwards and figure out where these pieces of the puzzle go in. Now, I can tell you personally, I'm going to have my first webinar in about 2 weeks, so it'll be about 14 days from now, which means that I have to block in time, at least from my perspective, at least 4 to 5 times per week. And I'm usually doing that between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m., where I'm watching either another webinar, and I'm creating the text for my webinar this week. So I'm getting the rough draft needs to be done for my webinar this week as far as text. And then as far as the actual the slides that go with it, that needs to be done by the end of next week. And then I need to practice it a couple times, flow through it before I do my very first webinar. It may not be perfect, but you know what? At least it'll be done, and I'll have practiced it once or a couple times so that I have some experience doing it before I go to do my first webinar. So I have an action plan for that, and I know what times I'm doing that, and I know what time my first webinar needs to be done. And my ebook. No, I want to have my the ebook copy done by the end of this week, because that's something that's actually going to be put on my webinar. Now, I've already calendared time in there tomorrow night to do it. I'm already made progress on this, so I don't need as much time to schedule it in. But I've made time this week on Wednesday, and I've made extra time on Sunday, about 4-hour block, which I may not need, but it will allow me to really touch it up and make it really sound good. And make sure that the grammar and everything is good, and then I hit the message exactly and explain everything the way I want to. So I've made sort of flex time for it then. So those are my priorities. Those are my due dates, and that's the time I have scheduled into the calendar to actually get those things done. But here are other things. We all know that we talked about relationships on this show, Rob, and we also, talk about flex time for ourselves, time for ourselves. My time for myself every morning is when I do my workout, pretty much between 7:30 and, kind of like 8:30. I'm probably doing a workout, my shower, all that stuff, taking care of myself, so I have that time. And, I even have time after 8 p.m. in the nighttime where I might do stretching, go for a walk with my girlfriend, and, have dinner together. So those are my things. So Rob, we talked about, I just gave examples of 3 things that I'm working on for the audience that they might be working on. I gave a timeline for them, and I blocked specific time in my calendar when each phase needs to be done by. And so what are your thoughts on that? And is there anything you would add? And then if not, let's go into the other areas of our life so that we can prioritize and get that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point. And here's a challenge for a lot of new entrepreneurs, or people that are doing something new. They don't know how long it's going to take. So, you might have a drop dead date of doing a webinar in 2 weeks, but you don't know how long it's going to take. So here's where, a coach or somebody who's done it before comes in. So like if I'm managing a project, typically what I do is I'll staff the project with subject matter experts. So in case of, if I was doing a webinar, I'd call up somebody who's done a webinar recently and said, hey, how long did it really take you start to finish to do this webinar? And you may find out it's way less time than you thought, and you may find out it's way more time than you thought. At least that kind of gives you a ballpark for now going, okay, I've got 2 weeks, but it's 120 hours. This is a problem. So am I going to push the date out, or am I going to figure out everything else comes off my plate and I just work on the webinar for the next 2 weeks? And that's really, experience is really the only way you're gonna figure that out, like to a science. And then you also have to look at, well, if I put a little less effort and the webinar wasn't quite perfect, is it better to get it done, or is it better to wait till it's perfect? And but that's kind of a judgment call. And I know that there are a lot of people putting out amazing webinars today, like Frank Kern and guys like that, and they've been doing it for 10 years. If you go back and actually look at any of their early stuff or any of the early websites, they're horrible. And you know what? They still converted. And a lot of times nowadays, new people doing stuff, their stuff is horrible, but they connect to the people. They've got a solution that actually solves the problem the person watching it wants to see. So if it's not 100% perfect, they don't care. It's the solution they need from somebody they know, like, and trust. And those are the real keys. A lot of people get bogged down. I've seen a lot of people go through speaker training and they're like, well, I've got to spend 20 hours to make sure the slide's perfect. Yeah, no, you're not selling $1 million in a weekend, okay? The slide doesn't have to be perfect. Let's figure out, okay, if you only had 4 hours, well, how much could you do? And if you schedule that time into your calendar and go, okay, I've only got 4 hours, you're going to focus and focus and focus, and you're going to do as good as you can in the 4 hours.
I like that, Rob, because you hit the nail on the head, because a lot of times we think things need to get perfect. First of all, we don't know if it's perfect, and it never is going to be perfect, right? So what is the minimal viable product I can produce that is of value? Because the reality is you're always going to get better. And so it's that voice in the top of our head that says it needs to be perfect. Look at anyone successful. You used a great example with Frank Kern. Okay, let's look at Brennan Bouchard. If you looked at his very first website, it looked worse than mine. My website, when I first put it up, right, and I put it up pretty quickly. Now, it's not a terrible website. I'm just saying it's a great website. But I got a lot of work to do on the branding component of the website and making sure there's a sequence and there's a flow. The website was constructed well. It was actually constructed exactly the way that I wanted to construct it. But now I need to, with my experience now and my growing and understanding the way I want to sequence it and funnel everything, there's got to be a lot of work that I do on creating that flow. But if I waited to when it was perfect, it still wouldn't be up yet, and no one would know who the hell Marc Gaudett is, and no one would be able to go in and opt in to watch my show and all of this stuff. So it's like, what's more important? The reality is just get your product out there, create it, and get feedback, because you're not going to know what's good or what's bad until you put something out there that you believe is good, and allow people, that your audience, to tell you one way or the other. So yes, there's quality, but there's also the point of you need to get things done and get out of your own head and stop letting the idea that things need to be perfect prevent you from getting anything done. So you mentioned a good point, and I think that's very valuable. And the other thing is, you're absolutely right. Anyone that's listening, you're going to block in this time, and it's easy to get stressed because you don't know exactly how long these things are going to take. Well, what I do know is this, though. If you don't block any time to get anything done, you'll have never taken action, and then you really won't know how long it's going to take. You'll just keep thinking it's nice for you to do this project, but you'll keep lying back on the fact that it's a nice idea, but you've never started yet. And so you just will never figure that out. The only way to figure that out is start by blocking time so that you get something done, and then you can realize that. And the other great value add you had is having a coach who can really help you identify that, who's been through it before, and help you come up with a good idea of what it's actually going to take. So that's very important. But before we wrap up the episode, let's also mention, relationships in downtime. So you just tell us your strategy, Rob. I like how you've set up your system where it's on the weekend that you just, you spend time with Diana, and Monday to Friday, it's business. So you've got to organize your schedule in such a way every Monday to Friday where you get everything you need to get done, so that on the weekend you can really enjoy that time. Because as we talked about yesterday, everyone that's listening, you didn't get into business because you just wanted to run your own business. You wanted to get into business because you like the lifestyle that a lot of successful business owners have, that freedom to travel the world, that freedom to do the things that they really want and what are passionate about. It wasn't so that you could work more and become a slave to your business. It was so that you could live a certain lifestyle and experience certain things of your life. And anyone that's watching the show, that's certainly true for them. So we need to be able to take control of our time within the time we have allocated, so that we can do more of those things that we like, which is spend time with our family, which is travel, which is, create things that we're passionate about. So maybe give us a quick, rundown of how you schedule your relationship and your own personal time, Rob, so that those things don't suffer while you're working on your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually brought up a couple of really key things there. And the first is, we are doing this for the lifestyle. Now, the first couple of years, we're going to work our butts off to get that lifestyle. So a lot of people go into being an entrepreneur thinking, hey, this is going to be great. No, it's hard work. If it wasn't, no one would do it. Like everyone would do it if it was easy. And if you're not prepared to put in the work, go get a job. Like really, honestly, that is my advice to you. Get a job if you're not prepared to put in what this is going to take, because this is not a 9-to-5. And so for me, when I work through the week, I don't see my girlfriend through the week. We Skype every night, but she's got her life. She goes to work. She has a 9-to-5, but she comes home, she makes dinner, then she goes to the gym and goes swimming for an hour, and then she does all her stuff and comes home and goes to bed. So, I don't work 8-hour days. I get up in the morning, I do my workout, and then I typically work, 10, 12, 14, 18-hour days, whatever it takes. But then when the weekend comes, that's personal time. And occasionally, yeah, if I'm doing a seminar or something like that, and it's on a Saturday or Sunday, you got to do that, because that's when people go to seminars. Now, on those, I make special concessions for Diana. Like typically she gets to stay at the hotel and she gets to go swimming while I'm working, and she likes that stuff. But other than that, I do not do business at all, if possible, on the weekends. That is personal time. That's relationship time. And then typically an hour, at least an hour in the evening, I'll carve out for personal time too, and I might wind down, watch. I watch a lot of webinars and documentaries. I pre-record them, or I screen capture all my webinars that I watch, and I'll study them. I'll look at not just, what are they presenting, how are they presenting, what kind of marketing are they using to get people in there. So I find it ironic when, a lot of people do webinars and say, we'll teach you the entire system for putting people into your webinar. It's like, I've already got it. I've got all 50 emails you sent me. I've seen the videos. I know what you're doing. Now, obviously, that doesn't work with everything. But, from a marketing perspective, I can see what they're doing. And for me, that's relaxing. It is work related. It's research. I like to do research. So, anytime I can tie something like that back into my business, absolutely. And then, weekends, I want to go see my friends. We want to come down and see you guys. I spend time with Diana. She doesn't have a lot of friends. So she really likes that I have a lot of friends and can introduce her to people and she can get to know them. That's, a whole new experience for her. And so we try and, no business if at all possible, strictly relationship building.
I love it. And so we're just coming to the end of the episode here. So thank you for sharing that, Robin. So I'm going to give some homework to the audience. So yeah. Guys, if you didn't get any of the golden nuggets here, go ahead, go back, rewatch this episode. There's a lot of things that will start resonating with you on ways in which you can start taking more proactive approach on your own schedule to make sure that you're actually getting the income generating activities prioritized in your calendar. So number one, take a look at what are those top 2 or 3 things that result in generating the most income for your business. Now, create a priority. List them in order of priority, and then based on when you need certain things done or projects that you have to have complete, deliverables you have to have completed by, start looking at your calendar and block sacred time in there. Time that nothing gets in the way. I don't care if it's someone calls you, nothing gets in the way. You treat it like a meeting, because it is a meeting. It's a meeting with yourself to get the most important things done. The only reason why you may not think it is because you may not think that there's anyone else on the other side. You see, we tend to break commitments to ourselves easier than we'll break commitments to others. And so that comes up to another thing I'm going to ask people to do in a moment, which has to do with accountability partner. But we'll stay with number one, block off time. If you had a doctor's appointment, you would tell someone, hey, I can't meet you for lunch. I have a doctor's appointment. If you viewed that as important, right? Or if you had a meeting with the CEO of the company, you wouldn't say, if someone says, oh, let's go out for drinks right now, you would say, you know what, after, guys, I have a meeting with the CEO today, right? Because that's a top priority for you. So identify those top 2 or 3 priorities, like Rob was saying, that add income generation, and block sacred time in your calendar where nothing else comes up on those things, and try as hard as you can to adhere to that. And if you have trouble, even when you do that, to stay accountable, well, the second thing you'll need to do for your homework is get an accountability partner. Because again, we tend to break commitments with ourselves easier than we break commitments with others. If I had a meeting with myself and I said I'm going to go to the gym, it's easier for me to break that with myself than if I'm meeting someone there. Or if I had a meeting with the CEO of the company, I'm not just going to not show up, right? If I have that commitment with someone else. So maybe you have an accountability partner that has similar goals as you do and similar priorities in their business, and you guys agree to do these certain actions each week or complete a certain amount each week, and you know that you're going to have to answer to each other at the end of the week. That's going to help you stay more accountable to that actual thing that you've blocked off and make it more important in your mind's eye. And then the last thing I would ask you to do, I'm looking at my notes here, is, maybe you want to also consider getting a coach for those projects that you're working on. I know for me, one of my coaches, Nick Pereira, he's done webinars. I can ask him on a weekly basis if I'm going in the right direction. What do you think? How should this first webinar look? I can get some insight into how long things are actually going to take. So there's 3 things for you to do, but the first one and the most important is find those top 2 or 3 priorities and block sacred time each week for you to get those actions done. The second thing is, if you need help staying accountable to those priorities, identify an accountability partner. Maybe it's someone that's new to running a business like you, and they have similar goals and similar priorities. And then the third thing is, if you want to take it to a step further, and you want to get more accurate on putting that time in there and identifying how much time it actually needs. Maybe you find a coach, someone that's actually done it, that's actually done the priorities or actually has created the business that you want, that can help give you some insight into how long it's actually going to take so that you can be more accurate in your planning. So those are the three things that I would give. Rob, is there anything you would add?
Yeah, the one other thing I would add, it's probably a little more around mindset, but if you've got some tasks that you got to do that you really don't particularly like doing, even revenue generation, like me, cold calling, I hate cold calling. But sometimes, you got to make calls, you got to follow up with people. Read your vivid vision before you go into that task, because that's going to help remind you of why you're doing this and get you excited about your business. And if you're excited about your business, you're going to be willing to do some of those tasks that you don't really want to do. Oh.
Very, very important. Yeah, absolutely, Rob. That's key. And if we can do that, if we actually remember to do that and we do that, the reality is no matter what we're doing, we're going to find our level of enjoyment in doing it because we're always connected to our vision. So I think that was very important. And so we're ready to wrap up the episode. So Rob, if people want to connect with you, just to let you know, the actual Facebook link on the bottom of your lower third is not as clean. So, okay. Is there anything you're working on now that the audience should know about? Where can they find you to connect with you and connect with more of your information?
Yeah, the best way right now is on Facebook. It's Rob Provenzano. I'm in Kitchener, Ontario. You'll see my picture. It's not hard to find. And until I come back from my whole business planning retreat, and then I'll relaunch my website and with new focus, and we'll kind of go from there. But for now, yeah, Facebook. I've made room to add some new friends, so please, yeah, come connect me, say hi, ask any questions you want, and we'll kind of go from there.
Awesome. Beautiful. So you guys heard it from Rob Provenzano there. And for everyone that wants to connect more with these weekly Google Hangouts, where we're doing live training every single week, Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, go ahead to marcgaudett.com. That's M-A-R-C, so Mark with a C, Gaudett, G-A-U-D-E-T-T. .com, and you can fill out your name and email address to sign up to receive weekly updates on who the guests are, as well as the episode's topic. Now, the thing is over the next 52 weeks, you tune into each one of these episodes every single week. You're going to have what you need to grow your business from scratch to a company that is generating profit. And I follow a very specific business model that's produced millionaires with these specific trainings. So these trainings were not put together by accident. These trainings are specifically to help you grow your business each and every week. They're not random topics, and they're not random people on the show either. They're people that are well doing these things very, very well, and generating income doing it, so that you can do the exact same. So once again, want to thank all of you guys for listening. Stay inspired, stay empowered, operate your life, your business from a place of freedom. And I want to thank you very much, Rob, as well, for joining us on the show and providing value as you always do. We'll see you guys next week, and have an awesome day and a great rest of your week.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.